Mesechtes Brachos, we are on Gimel Amud Aleph. That'll be the Amud for today, but we are obviously starting from the bottom of Beis, Amud Beis, the two dots. So yesterday we discussed about different zmanim. When is the earliest time one can read Kriya Shema at night? When is the latest time one can read Kriya Shema? A lot of back and forth. We're going to finish up the discussion about the timing for Kriya Shema here, from two dots to two dots within these next few lines, and then we'll get into some interesting stuff, a story with Eliyahu Hanavi, talk a little about Men Yehi Shmei Rabbah. Interesting Amud coming up for sure. Let's get started. 4 lines from the bottom. Amar Mar on Beis, Amud Beis. Amar Mar, Amar Le Rabbi Yehuda. So now we're going on a point that we sort of skimmed over a little, and we're going to bring light to it now. We said before, one of the opinions was that the earliest time one can read Kriya Shema at night is when the Kohanim go to the mikvah. The question is, which we asked before, you're telling me that the earliest time one can read Kriya Shema at night is a time that occurs during the day. The Kohanim go to the mikvah during the day. So how are you going to tell me that the earliest time one can read Kriya Shema at night is during the day? That doesn't make any sense. It has to be a certain time at night. So how is this a good reference? So we have a good kasha here on Rameir. So Rameir answers no. Rameir says, in order for you to ask this question, you have to assume that the Kohanim do in fact go to the mikveh during the day. But that's not such a given. Who says I hold by your ben hashmashos? Right? Rameir says, you have a different ben hashmashos than me. Ben hashmashos is the time, we assume, at least, right, between shkia and seis. So it can be, 45 minutes, an hour, even less, a little more. Whatever it is, it's a significant amount of time. So who says I hold by your ben hashmashos? That it's this, it's this time frame. Ka'amina. Ana ben hashmashos Rabbi Yosi ka'amina. I hold like Rabbi Yosi's ben hashmashos. I hold like ben hashmashos is a suffix yom, suffix laila. We're not sure if it's daytime or nighttime, right? So, and we're also not sure how long this period is. So Rameir is saying you're telling me that you have a problem that I hold my zman, early zman for Kriya Shema as a time that occurs during the day. Maybe it's not. I hold like Rabbi Yosi's ben hashmashos. And what's Rabbi Yosi's ben hashmashos? Rabbi Yosi ben hashmashos keherafayin. Zeh nichnas v'zeh yotzi. Keherafayin means like the blink of an eye. Zeh nichnas, it comes, v'zeh yotzi, and it goes. It comes, it goes. It's a second. It's a second. We don't know when ben hashmashos is. It's a split second. It's not really a significant amount of time. So therefore, I can hold v'yef shalom alav, and it's impossible to know exactly what it is. So therefore, I could hold that the Kohanim really, let's say it's during ben hashmashos, is when they go to the mikvah. That can be nighttime already, right? According to your ben hashmashos, Rameir says, maybe it's not nighttime. But according to my ben hashmashos, according to Rabbi Yosi's ben hashmashos, that it's the blink of an eye. We don't know when ben hashmashos is. So then, the Kohanim can in fact go to be Tovel at night, and that can still be the earliest time one can read Kriya Shema at night. So now we have a kasha on Rameir from his earlier times, right? Kasha the Rameir are the Rameir. We have a kasha from Rameir on Rameir. Why? Because earlier Rameir said, if you recall, on the last Amud, Rameir said that when is the earliest time to read Kriya Shema? When people begin their meal Friday night. Now he's saying, when's the earliest time to read Kriya Shema? When Kohanim go to the mikvah. Which one is it? It's 2 separate times. So it's a kasha Rameir on Rameir. So the Gemara answers, and a simple way to get out of it, Shrei Tanoi Liv Rameir. Rameir lived before the time of the Gemara, so therefore they weren't exactly sure what he said. So two Talmidim seemingly came and said, this is what Rameir said. And one Talmud came and said, this is the time he gave. And one Talmud came and said, this is the time he gave. So there's 2 opinions as to what Rameir said. Kash Rebbe Eliezer on Rebbe Eliezer. We have the same thing from Rebbe Eliezer on Rebbe Eliezer. Because Rebbe Eliezer also had 2 different times as to when the earliest time to read Kriya Shema is. So how can that be? He could only have one time. How can the same guy have 2 separate opinions as to when the earliest time is? The Gemara answers very the same thing. Trei Tanoi Liv Rebbe Eliezer. 2 people had 2 different opinions as to what Rebbe Eliezer held. And another answer that you can possibly say is that the Reisha is not Rebbe Eliezer. Okay, so the Reisha of the Mishnah doesn't have Rebbe Eliezer's opinion, but Rebbe Eliezer is quoting a brisa. He doesn't have to be parallel to the Mishnah per se. Very good. Okay, so we said earlier in the Mishnah Ad Seif Hashmua that the latest time one can read Kriya Shema at night is until the end of the first watch time. So what does this mean? Let's get into it. My Ksavar Rebbe Eliezer. What does Rebbe Eliezer hold? Iksavar Shalosh Mishmaros Havalayla. So there's a machlekes as to the night time is 12 hours, correct? So is the night divided up into 3 separate portions or 4 separate portions. If it's divided up into 3 portions, it's 4 hours each, right? 4 times 3 is 12. If it's divided up into 4 separate portions, it's 3 hours each. So, does Rabbi Eliezer hold that shalosh mishmaros havalayla, that the nighttime is divided up into 3 different portions, leimad arba shois? So just say it's 1/3 of it, 4 hours, right? And if you hold that the nighttime is divided up into 4 portions, leimad shalosh shois, just say 3 hours. Why? Again, it's a similar question that we had yesterday. Why the roundabout lashon? Just tell me as it is. Tell me directly. Don't say, until the end of the first watch time. Just say 3 hours, 4 hours. End of story. Why the other lashon? Really, you can say that the nighttime is divided up into 3 separate portions. Then why don't you just tell me 4 hours? The Gemara says, it's teaching us a separate point, obviously, right? The Gemara uses a different lashon to teach us a separate point, not just to teach us when the latest time to read Kriya Shema is, but how you can tell when that time is. They obviously didn't have watches at that time. They didn't have clocks. So, how do they know? How do they know the time? It's pitch black outside. How do they know when the times are, meaning the night time is 12 hours. It's pitch black during most of it. So how do they know the different stages of the nighttime if they didn't have a watch? So there were times to tell in Rikia, in the sky, in Shemayim. And there were also indications to the different time frames of the nighttime down here on earth. The Tanya Eliezer Omer Shalosh Mishmaros Havalayla Akol Mishamer Yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Shai Ka'ari. The nighttime is divided up into 3 portions, and by each portion, Hashem sits on his throne and he cries out like a lion. So 3 separate times during the night, Hashem cries out like a lion. Shneimar Hashem Imaram Yishag, that Hashem from above, he cries out. And Neveyu here means the Beis HaMikdash. He cries out every single night. Hashem sits up there, Kaviyachal, and he cries out about the fact that we have no Beis HaMikdash. We see Hashem cries out about it too. It's not just us on Tisha B'Av. Hashem cries out about it every night. V'simin l'davar mishmar rishayna chamor noyer. And in the first, so how do we know down here? Right? Down here, so that's Me'ara, meaning there are 2 times to tell when the 3 portions of the nighttime are. In the sky, how do we know? Because Hashem sits, and the 3 different portions, he cries out like a lion. What about Me'ara, we said, down here? On the earth, how do us humans know, without watches, when how the 3 portions are split up? When does portion number 1 start? When does portion number 2 start? How do we know? So this is the answer. Mishmar Rishayna Chamar Noyer. The Mishmar Rishayna is when you hear the donkeys, right? When you hear the donkeys, that's when you know the first watch time has started. Or has ended. We'll discuss that. Shniya Klavim. Shniya, the second time is Klavim Sayakim. It's when the dogs cry out. Shlishis, the third portion, is Tinoik Yoinik Mishedi Imoy. The third portion is when the children suckle from their mother. That's the third portion. V'isha misperis and bala, and another way to tell the third portion is when the couple start speaking with each other. It's early in the morning, so they're starting to get up and they're starting to speak with each other in bed. That is the third watch time, or the third portion of the nighttime. Okay, so Micah Chashav Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer gave us now, great, he gave us 3 indications as to when we can tell the 3 separate portions of the night. So that's great. There's only one problem. When does he count it from? Meaning, these indications, for example, the donkeys, right? When I hear the donkeys, is that the beginning of the first portion or the end of the first portion? I still don't know exactly when it is. I now know how to tell the 3 different portions, but I don't know if it's telling me it's the beginning of that portion or the end of that portion. So when is Rabbi Eliezer counting it from? If all these simanim that we gave indicate the beginning of the portion, why do I need a siman to tell me about the beginning of the first portion? Or to who? When it's dark outside, I know. When it's dark outside, I know. It's the beginning of the night. I don't need a siman for that. So it can't be that it's the beginning, that it's telling me the beginning of the portions. If he's trying to tell me the end of the mishmaros, the end of the portions, then what about the last portion? Why do I need lamali simane? Why do I need a siman? Yamamahu. When it's light outside. Very simply. In the beginning of the night if it's light, at the end of the night if it's day. So the only one that's really needed is the middle one, depending on which way you look at it. So what are these indications needed for? What are these simanim needed for? Rather, the first thing, the first watch time, the first portion is telling us the end of the first portion. The last one is telling us the beginning of the last one, and the middle is right in the middle of the last one. So they're all needed for different reasons. Or you could say, no, they're all at the end. But why do you need the last one? Right? You know, when it's daytime, that's the end of it. Why do you need the last siman? And you can say that, so there are certain people that are still going to need this siman. Meaning we just said, you don't need to tell me a siman for the last time, right? The latest time in the last portion. I'll know when that is. The morning, when it gets light outside. So who's going to need that siman? The answer is, Laman degani bebeis afel, v'lo man kriya shema. Someone that's in a dark room. If he's in a dark room, he can't see if it's light outside, he can't see if it's dark outside, it's always dark. So he doesn't know when the Zman Kriya Shema is based on light. Like most people would be able to tell the daytime starts when it's day, when it's light outside. But he can't tell that. So what is his siman? Amos. So when is the time that he gets up to read Kriya Shema? Given the Isha, Mesperis and Ba'ala, Vatina, Gyonik, Mished, Imai, Likom, Velikri. When, as we stated before, the couples are speaking with each other in bed, when he can hear that, supposedly. And when he can hear that the children are suckling with their or it could be that he's speaking with his own wife. Any way you want to look at it, that's a time that he can actually know. Light outside, he's not going to be able to know because he can't see the light. But when it comes to these simanim, these he can actually know, and then likum velikri, then he can get up and read Kriya Shema. So that is a siman. So there's two answers, right? Why do we need these simanim in the first place? So the Gemara says either because we place them at certain times that you wouldn't know based off light or darkness, or because it's a guy that's in a dark room, and if he's in his dark room, he's not going to be able to tell when it gets light outside. So therefore, he needs something else that he can either hear or do himself, so that he can know when to read Kriya Shema. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel Mishmei Derav Gimel Mishmares Have Laila. So Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel said in the name of Rav that the nighttime is divided up into three portions. Val Kol Meshamer, Meshamer, and in every single portion, Yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we said earlier, Hashem sits V'shai Karei, and he cries like a lion. Va'aymer, and he says, Oy Labanim, woe is to my children, Sha'abavonoisehem HaCharavti Espesi, that through their sins my house has been destroyed. Meaning the Beis Hamikdash has been destroyed through their sins. V'sarafti Seichali, and my Heichel has been burnt. V'aglisim Labain Umaysa Oilam, and they have been exiled amongst the nations of the world. It's interesting to know that there are actually people that wake up we said there are three separate times in the middle of the night that Hashem cries out about the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. There are actually people that wake up in the middle of the night to cry out with Hashem. Incredible thing to think about. Okay, Tanya. Here we go. We get a story. Amar Rabbi Yosi. Tanya means we learned in a brisa. So Amar Rabbi Yosi. One time I was traveling on the road, and I went into a broken building. One of the broken buildings in Yerushalayim. I went there to daven. So who came? Eliyahu Hanavi himself. He came. V'shamali ala Pesach, and he waited for me by the entrance because I was davening. He waited until I finished davening. See, even for Eliyahu Hanavi, you don't stop davening. Incredible. So after I finished davening, Amar li, Eliyahu Hanavi said to me, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi. Right? He said Shalom Aleichem. And I said to him, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Umayri. V'amar li, and he said to me, Eliyahu Hanavi said something to me, B'ni, mipnei man nichnosas l'chor vazu. You know, by the way, when Eliyahu Hanavi is asking you a question, you're probably in trouble. So Eliyahu Hanavi asked him, my son, why did you go into this broken down building? It's a broken down building. Why would you go into that? So Amarti Loi, I said to him, Lispal to daven. V'amar li, Eliyahu Hanavi said back to me, Hayal chala spal b'derech. You could have just davened on the road. Why'd you have to go into this broken down building? V'amarti li, I said to me, Misyarei. So I said to him, I'm sorry, V'amarti Loi, I said to him, Misyarei hayisi shema yafsiku bi oivrei durachim. Misyarei hayisi, I was scared. Shema yafsiku bi, maybe I would be interrupted by the oivrei durachim, by the passerbys in the road. People would pass by on the road, and they would interrupt me, so therefore I went into the chorva, so it was a little more peaceful. V'amar li said to me, Hayil chal l'spal tefillah k'tzara, so you should daven the shorter tefillah. Ba'iseh shah. So you should have davened a shorter tefillah. Right? So therefore, you would have gotten the tefillah over with quicker, and you wouldn't have had the problem of the passerbys bothering you on the road. That moment I learned three things from Eliyahu Hanavi. I learned that one should not enter a broken building. I learned that one is allowed to daven on the road. And I also learned that if one does choose to daven on the road, one should daven a shortened tefillah, an abridged version of tefillah. This is not halacha l'maisa. In fact, there is no tefillah katsara really nowadays. This is the story here in the Gemara. And he said to me, my son, Ma kol shamas b'char v'zu. Did you hear any voice? So now the conversation continues, right? Did you hear any voice in this broken building? And I said to him, Shamasi baskul. I heard a baskul, a heavenly voice. I heard. Shemana memes kiyayna, that was crying like a dove. Va'omeres, and said, Oy labanim, woe to my children, quoting the same thing we just saw a few lines earlier. Shaba v'neisim hecharafti espesi v'sarafti sichali v'gleisim l'bnei umais. That because of their sins, my Beis Hamikdash has been destroyed, and my heichel has been burnt, and they've been exiled amongst the nations. V'amar li chayecha v'chaye raishcha. So this is a lashon of a swearing, right? So Eliyahu says, I swear, lo shazu bilvad amar kach. This was not only said at this moment. This baskul that you heard, it didn't just happen that time. You happened to have heard it that time. But every single day, it's said 3 times. Hashem says this 3 times, as we mentioned. He cries out over the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. It's not only this, but when Jews go into Shul and go into the Beis Medrash to learn, and they say, Yehei Shemei Agodol Mevarech, they say, Yehei Shemei Rabbah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Menana Roisha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu nods his head in approval, V'omer Ashrei HaMelech Shemakalsa Noisai Bebeisai. V'omer, and he says, Ashrei HaMelech Shemakalsa Noisai Bebeisai. Praiseworthy is a king who is praised in his house. Happy is a king who is praised in his house. Kach ma loy la'av she hagla es banav. Woe to the father that has to exile his children. Va'ilahem labanim shegalu me'al shulchan avim. And woe to the children that made his father exile them. So meaning Hashem saying essentially here, listen, Amin Yeshvei Rabbah is great, but and it's fantastic. It's a huge thing to say Amen Yehei Rabbah, especially with all their koiches, but it's not the same as doing it in the Beis Hamikdash. It used to be they did this in the Beis Hamikdash. It's not the same. It's not the same as having a Beis Hamikdash. It's incredible. Amen Yehei Rabbah, the Gemara in Shabbos says that one who answers Amen Yehei Rabbah with all their koiches can tear up the Gzar Din, tear up the bad decrees. So it's incredible to think about that. Just a few words, it can really do so much for us. But nonetheless, Hashem is still saying, despite how big Yehei Shmei Rabbah is, despite how big that is, still it's not the same as having the Beis Hamikdash. So we should obviously have the Beis Hamikdash rebuilt B'meir V'meinu very quickly in our days. So that'll do it for today. I went a little overboard now as well. We're already over 17 minutes, but this is a great Amud. And listen, I might have to go overboard a couple times, or a few times, or maybe more than a few times. I guess we'll have to play it by ear. But so we'll stop there. 2 dots on the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph.